is one of the things I really feel badly for young women, because they're not guided through this with any sense whatsoever. And I'll tell you what my experience has been working with women, and you can take this for what it's worth. And I've worked with women who've achieved the highest levels of their profession. I don't mean just in academia, but in a number of different fields. This is what happens. We'll take the typical woman, conservative woman, because they're more typical, conscientious, not particularly open. So they're dutiful people, you know, they're existing within the structures of their society. So I'll take female lawyers as a classic example. So they're very good at high school, very hardworking, very intelligent, but very dutiful, and often rather agreeable. And that's important because it means to some degree that they want to please and they'll do what they're told. And so part of the reason I think that women are outperforming men in elementary, junior high school, and university is because they're more likely to be obedient. And I know that to some degree because we did analysis of students in Quebec and found out that one thing that predicted grades over and above intelligence and conscientiousness was agreeableness, and agreeable people got better grades than their IQ and conscientiousness would predict. And that's particularly negative for men. So imagine this is what's happening. So you're a borderline student and you're also a bit rebellious and antisocial. I'm going to fail you. Like you're right on the cusp. Don't like you much. You fail. You have exactly the same grade profile, but I like you. Tick. You move ahead. You don't. And so one of the things that's dividing men from women as they progress through school is the degree to which they're agreeable. Now that works out to some degree for women insofar as the agreeableness moves them forward, but they encounter the negative elements of being agreeable later in their careers. Anyways, their women are very good in high school, then they go to college, they're very good in college, they nail their damn grades, they do their studying, they get their A's and they ace their LSAT, so they're smart too. Then they go off to do their articling and they're really good at it. And then they get offered an associate position and they're really good at it, and then by the time they're 30 they make partner, and let's say they're in high pressure, high paying jobs. $250,000 a year, $300,000 a year, $500 an hour. Okay, what's your life like? You work all the time, period. 70 hours a week, 75 hours a week, flat out, and you don't get to make any mistakes. And if your client calls you at 3 in the morning on Sunday, you say, I'm really glad to hear from you, because if you don't, there's some hot law firm in New York that'll take your client from you at a moment's notice. And the client is paying you, whatever, the firm, $750 an hour, of which maybe you get $350, and what they want is an answer about something really complicated right bloody now. And you can say all you want about the fact that women have a difficult time with that because it's a male-dominant patriarchy. Any female lawyer who's hit 30 and is a partner that has any sense at all knows that's complete bloody rubbish. It's market determined right to the core. What happens to the women when they're in their 30s? They all leave the high-end law firms. Why? Because who in their right mind would want to live like that? That's the issue, right? Once you make about $60,000 a year for your family, but let's say for you personally, additional income has zero impact on your quality of life. Zero. So why work 80 hours a week? Well, men will do it, some men, very few. A handful of hyper-competitive men who are obsessed with hitting the pinnacle of the given dominance hierarchy they're in will happily work 80 hours a week, and they'll forego everything else. Relationships, family, children, way in the second category. And so those men are often very difficult to live with too, because they're so obsessed with their career. It's hard to have a relationship with them. And maybe they don't have much of a relationship with their kids, but they're damn good at what they do, and part of that is they're smart and disciplined, and they'll work non-stop all the time. It's like an obsession, and that's the sort of people who run things. Those are the people who run things. Well, they're often also disagreeable too, because you want to manage people? Really? They're not going to like you. You know, and it's not an easy thing to not be liked, and actually if you're an agreeable person, and women are more agreeable than men, it's quite painful to be disliked. But if you're in a managerial and executive position, the probability that people are going to like you is quite low. Now, if you're a real son of a bitch, then they're going to dislike you more. But those positions are very stressful, partly because of the interpersonal dynamics, and they're also incredibly competitive. So the women hit that at 30 and they're completely qualified, and the law firms are bloody desperate to keep them, because it's really hard to find highly qualified people, especially once you've put all that time into training them, especially if they're also good at bringing in business. The law firms trip over themselves to try to keep them. They can't. The women think, why in the world am I doing this? Why in the world would anyone in their right mind do this? Especially because they're often married by that point too, and generally they've married a husband who makes as much money or more than them. So they don't need the damn money. And so they think, well, there's more to life than this, which is exactly the right thing to think. And so then they go and find a job that's 9 to 5 and controllable, so that they can hire a nanny and have some kids and have a life. And it's like, yes, that's the intelligent thing to do. So we've got things backwards in our culture. We're thinking, at least in part, why aren't there more women in positions of power? Wrong question. The right question is, why are there any men at all who want those positions of power? Because it's not just positions of power. You have to be such a knothead to think that. Oh, it's a position of power. It's like, sure, but it's a position of overwhelming responsibility. And if you make mistakes, you're done.